Real estate agent, are you looking to acquire clients consistently so you can grow your business and your income to live a great lifestyle? This is Dave Fanale and the RE Skill Builder podcast.
Well, hello, everybody. It is Real Estate Talk TGIF. It's episode 105. It's been 103 weeks in a row. We did 2 extra shows. And today I am so honored to have a great man, great visionary in the real estate industry on, Brad Inman. Thank you so much for coming on, Brad, today.
Pleasure to be here. It's a special day. It's a special day. It's a holiday that we're all celebrating, at least our family, as Juneteenth, which is an important one for us all to think about today. So I'm happy to be here, though, in the bosom of the subject I care a lot about, which is real estate. How are you, Dave?
I am fantastic. And as I said, it's called Real Estate Talk TGIF. And just so if you didn't know what TGIF stands for, it stands for Thank God It's Fanale. That would be me. But it's also Friday and it's also Juneteenth, and it's something we're all celebrating. Thanks so much for coming on. You've been involved in real estate for a very, very long time. And I first came aware of you at the Inman Connect conference in Manhattan, which I've been going to for years. I've been the one on the West Coast several times. And I really believe, and I've always told people that it is the best run conference. It's the best setup conference. I mean, there's no BS about it. It moves. It's fast. I mean, there's no garbage. I love it. Right. So what was, people talk about your stuff and everything else. You started that a long time ago with just a few people. What gave you the idea to come through and actually start a conference like that? And, a lot of people think it was upstart at that time. Wouldn't you agree?
Not sure that term upstart, but I will tell you the history. Connect started actually right here, Dave. This is the woods of Sonoma County, and I gathered 50 people here at a home I own, and we had all of our meetings outdoors. They were people from real estate, academia, and technology. It was 1996, and I had this vision that technology would transform real estate. And so we gathered together, and when we left, a gentleman, a friend of mine said, I think there's 1,000 people out there that worry about real estate technology or worry on things, and you ought to have a conference. And I'm an entrepreneur, so I said, sure. So the first was free, and the next one we said, hey, we'll charge $800, and we got 1,000 people. And suddenly there was this, this community of people. Traditional industry people were afraid of technology, put it down, condemned, criticized it, made fun of the entrepreneurs, right, and did everything they could to stop their actions. And we recognized them, we hailed them, and then a lot of progressive people from the traditional industry who, practices, new real estate inside and out, have been doing it for decades. They came together with the technologists, and I think together this community has done a lot to really innovate over the last 25 years.
Oh, it absolutely has. And I've been honored to meet so many people that you've had on stage there. Kayla Laos I knew before, Karen Carr, Veronica Figueroa, I can go on and on and on with people that have been on this broadcast as well. So it's been a treat for me to learn so much of those events, and I just absolutely love them. So let's get into the idea of real estate today. We are almost not so much in our area on the East Coast, New York City, but we're close to being post-COVID, being post-coronavirus. Real estate, I believe, makes the world go round. What do you see the next month to 12 months looking like in the real estate industry, talking residential first?
Yeah, I think, first of all, we have to be really clear. The COVID is done. And the reason it's not done is we don't yet understand it, Dave, is my feeling. I've been a journalist my whole life. I work every day to try to figure out what's going on and do the best I can, certainly make a lot of mistakes. But my best sense, reading as much as I do and I can do, is this thing is still a mystery. And I think the science reminds me of in San Francisco in the early 80s, where there was a lot of theories and notions and, reactions. I remember once I went on vacation in Southern California and someone said, you can't go in a jacuzzi, you could get HIV, someone there. So I think it's very similar. We've heard from a lot of the health experts that this is, I don't think we understand it. And then there's the economy, which, is a V recovery. It looks like people want to go back to work, businesses are opening. We don't know the scale of that, and we still have massive unemployment. But one steady Eddie through it all, Dave, is real estate. Whatever's happening around us, whatever externalities, and I'm sure you preach this to your listeners and your customers, that you can't control the externalities. I can't control COVID. We can't control the economy. We can't control interest rates. We can't control unemployment, but we can control our own fate. And it looks to me like consumers, low rates, and people employ, and this impulse to move, this impulse to get a better house, is not just a passing fad. It's something that it seems to be, throughout all the numbers, all of the organizations, all of the experts, the sustainable sort of demand for housing. Now, that's a surprise. Even during the 2010, national recession, people moved. Well, we just had a story. People are moving back with their parents. That means they're not quite renting an apartment. People are always in motion, particularly during change, and they're in motion with the residents. So I think the industry, the opportunistic, and I don't mean by opportunistic, I mean agents that are awake and aware and present and active and staying in touch with their customers are doing very well, because a lot of people are making moves. They're making geographical moves. They're making inter-neighborhood moves. They're going from larger to smaller, from smaller to larger. It's all over the map. I've never seen a more dynamic real estate market. So in that way, I think for those of us in the real estate industry, it's good news. But these other externalities, oh my God, how do we even begin to understand or figure them out? It's very difficult.
It is. And one of the things that we've tried to do, and we work with our students and clients and people on, is to find out where people are coming from. This way you market your area, your listings, whatever, to them, right? So recently, one of the things that comes to light is that, so in New Jersey, the Northeast, people tend to move south, along the East Coast, either to Florida or to North Carolina, South Carolina. I recently spoke with some of my friends, a good sized company in South Carolina, and said that people are going to be moving back that retired there, going to be moving back. So you've got a different focus of people. Rather than moving out, they want to move back because they don't want to be closed off from their families again. Yeah. Right. Have you seen that? Have you seen other different changes that you didn't see before?
Yeah, I think it's across the map. I mean, there's, if you think of it, for most of us being holed up by ourselves with our families, or by a lot of people in real estate alone, it was a great moment of reflection. And social isolation is something it's funny. We all said, oh, I wish I had time to just rest. I wish I had time just to contemplate and think. And we had that opportunity if people took advantage of it. I know me, I recalled stories from childhood I'd forgotten because I hadn't taken the time to slow down and get off, the treadmill. And so I think with that, there's a lot of things that are being reconsidered. A lot of people are asking themselves, I think, really, hard questions about their life and what's important. And so I hadn't heard that specific angle, Dave, but I think it's insightful. It wouldn't surprise me a bit. I get to see my son and my grandson today. We've been apart, and we see each other once, but I hadn't seen my new grandson from my daughter. And I came to the Bay Area where I don't normally live, but I have a home here. And I came here, I know, just instinctually, to be closer to them. Now, long term, would I rethink about relocating here? Possibly, but I think you're right on. I think there's so many, that's why it's dynamic, Dave. Something that's dynamic isn't very linear. It's not simple. It's not sequential. It's a multiplex. And I think we have a multiplex of behaviors going on here that are spawned by all kinds of things. Some fear, some get close to families, some want to be rural, some want a bigger house. Swimming pools are back. Monster houses that couldn't sell I'm told, back in the luxury market. So a lot of, we reshuffled the deck because we had an historic moment that in so many bad ways that has, reorganized the whole table.
The phrase you just used, reshuffle the deck, man, and then some, right? So what I said and what we look at and what we see as the new cycle here in the New York metro area is that we see that there's just in a personal experience with a friend of mine looking for a new apartment in the city where they're actually doing more discounts where they were before because they've already started losing people to the suburbs here where I am. And we're seeing people from here leaving and going elsewhere where it's like, warmer and, more easier to work from as far as comfort and enjoyability. So then we get to the next issue that I wanted to cover is we talk about residential. We talked about that cycle. I think what will happen is New York will have a lull for about a month and then jump back with the residential area. But what about the commercial, office, and retail markets of not only the city, but also I'm very close to a town called Paramus, which is, some people have called it the mall capital of the world. There's so many malls within 2 square miles. What's going to happen there? Because we don't know if they open or when they open, how many of the small spaces are going to be gone.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there is really, the jury's out on what's going to happen with small businesses. I think it's similar to brokerage owners, Dave. Those that had that were older, that were already feeling margin squeezed, business was already tough. They don't have a succession plan, meaning they don't have an office manager. They can do some sort of employee sale. They don't have an heir to the family that wants to run the business. I think some of those broker owners are going to just give it up. And I think similar, there's restaurants. I live in New York or lived there for a long time. And, some of our old faves were really curious. We know the owners, they're very old. We like the more traditional New York. We're not really foodies. And, from diners to, Cipriani's and 59th and 5th. And the question is, are they going to reopen? I suspect Cipriani's will, but, a lot of these restaurants I don't think will open. And this hit them in the face. And so I think that's a question for business generally. And then, office space, the beauty of this moment is we've digitized so much of our behavior and activity that, it forced our hand. We kept real estate transactions going thanks to digital technology. Inman News went virtual 4 years ago by a weird quirk of events. And our productivity went up. Our morale has never been higher working remote. And our recruitment is much, much easier. And I think companies, a taste of this. And I remember the first few months was difficult when we went remote. But thanks to Slack, and Google Meetups and Zoom, our morale's never been better. We've never been better connected. No jerk is in the company that can manage when you're in an office. That charming guy that manages up and doesn't do shit. Those guys don't survive in a transparent world. Look at this, Dave. You and I see each other connected and past. We don't really have a conversation. Here, I feel like I'm 12 inches away. I'm talking to you. I'm getting to know you.
Right.
The benefits of digital are really amazing. And right now, we as human beings, I got to stay 10 feet away from my new grandson. I can't hold him. I can't, there's just real limitations put upon us by this health, scare that we've had. It's more than a scare. It's real. So it's transformed. And then what's going to happen to office space? Well, I think that tells the story. There'll be many companies like Inman News that'll go, I can get rid of the Big Bertha IBM copper in the maintenance agreement. What a great relief that is. When you sell a company, Dave, the thickest document in the transaction is a lease.
Yep.
Because it's friggin' complicated. Being liberated from all of those things is amazing for our company. Now, our company is very young, writers and editors all over the world, but it's just much more functional. Lots of companies will recognize that. And this is going to hit office space. It just seems obvious in office space. I think some big companies are going to make some moves. I've already heard of some really big companies in real estate. They're not really going to reopen. There's going to be a handful of people there, and they're going to think about what they're going to do to that lease. That's what happened to Inman News. We started hiring from around the world to do coverage in different places, and the people in our San Francisco office started complaining that they were the only ones that had to come into an office, and only a handful wanted to come into the office. So an office space that handled 100 people, there were 4 people there. And then you're going to scratch your head as the owner of a company, and you're going to say, okay, why do I have an office, a plate this big for 4 people? So, but real estate's very, very clever. Adaptive reuse is just amazing what developers, real estate people do, and they'll adapt to this situation. But there's going to be some transformative things going on. And then in retail, I think you're right. It's, people learn to shop online in a new and different way. And there's certain things we're never going to go to the mall for. that shopping experience, I don't think is over. I don't think it's dead, but it's certainly going to be transformed in ways I can't even imagine yet.
Well, one of the things I've been talking about over the past few years is I believe that there's going to be a transformation of retail. And this is what I believe. I believe that the big malls are going to be like 25% minimum vacant. And what's going to happen is people are still going to want the surface. So there's a chance, I see a huge chance, that the downtown of the small town is going to come back as far as a retail area, because people will want to go to the boutiques for that service, for that special service, and they'll pay the 10 to 15 to 20% more. So I believe we've got, I mean, that might be closer than we think, right? And that's one thing.
And those rates, Dave, are going to come down because there's a lot of vacant in old traditional retails. The commercial landlords in some of these big cities, like New York class, they were really, really nasty. They were not very responsive to their tenants. They weren't afraid to raise the rent. These retailers are suffering for this, particularly retailers that didn't have on the water of e-commerce. And, they were dead in the water. And the companies that did have toes in both, meaning they had a store and they also had a really vibrant e-commerce business, they're doing just fine. They take that shift. But I don't have a lot of mercy for some of those commercial landlords.
Yeah, well, it's pretty interesting because there's a huge mall here called the Garden State Plaza that is just absolutely huge. And what they've done, they've already started a couple of years ago. They made up plans to try to transform it also into a residential space as well. So they're doing that, and they've got that set up because the town of Paramus, which is where it is, doesn't really have a downtown. So they wanted to take part of their parking lot and make it a real downtown, which is a pretty cool idea. And it's really, as you say, transformative. So as we move along, one of the things that I see is I believe that there's going to be a hesitation to get away from office space simply because how is the production going to be? We're already hearing results from the education sector that it wasn't as good as they thought it could be, where test scores aren't going to be as good and the education wasn't as good through Zoom classes and stuff. I kind of think you're going to see areas where people are going to need to go into an office. However, let me know if you agree with this, that company that wants to hire that vice president for $250,000 that has to move to New York is going to say, well, you know what? I can have a guy and pay him half as much and he can work out of Indiana and still be my vice president. Those things make any sense to you or not?
Oh, yeah, it's going to happen. It's already happening. And it's a lot of big, companies, managers, executives, and big companies that have already made the decision to permanently work from home. And, my whole management team works all over the world and it doesn't matter. It has no bearing on them being in an office, and none. It's irrelevant. And productivity's higher. As I said, morale's never been better and recruiting's never been easier. If you're recruiting young people that have young families and are just starting out, this is a gift that they do not have to commute. It's an unbelievable gift. Right. And all commute does is makes, your personnel come in discouraged, and because it's a horrible experience to sit in rush hour traffic or get on a train or get on a bus. So I think across the org, it's and not everybody can do it. Service sector clearly can't. And so I don't want to be elitist about it, but the reality is many, many, many companies are going to find this as a godsend.
Well, I'm going to tell you, for me in particular, just to talk about this broadcast, I said I've done 105 of them. I've done it from Boston. I've done it from Orlando, Miami, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. So, and Memphis. So I've done it all over the country, and it was easy to do. But since we're talking about that and some of the bricks and mortar real estate companies,
the market cap of Zoom is greater than all the airlines combined. And what that means is we're going to take Zoom Airlines to business meetings where I used to jump on a plane and go to San Francisco from LA or have to fly to New York. About half of those business meetings are no longer necessitated by physical meeting. Half of our activity, half of real estate interaction will be completely digital. All of these things are changing. Actually, we're finding digital is easier, and it's you get as much accomplished. You don't waste time. A physical meeting, people are distracted. They're looking at their text messages. They go to the bathroom. Look at you and I. We haven't looked at our phones. We haven't run to the bathroom. We've had this engaging conversation. If I was in your studio, you know, we'd be looking around, talking to the engineers, the production people. So it's a lot more efficient. And it's not to say, oh, technology is going to replace human interaction. That's not the point. It's just that we're going to be able to do things actually easier than we before. I went to 110 cities on Zoom Airlines. I gave presentations to 30,000 realtors. How could I, in three months, how could I have physically done that?
You couldn't have.
Impossible.
Right. You couldn't have. You couldn't have. I mean, I look at, you know, for me in particular, you really don't know much about me. I owned a brokerage for 21 years. I sold that 2.5 years ago. But 5 years ago, I was teaching this. I was teaching, you know, how to do this virtual. I said, you know what? Why don't you do your buyer presentation, your first buyer meeting through Zoom? They go, what's Zoom? Oh, no, I can't do that. They won't want to do that. I said, believe me, you're going to be convenient for them when Mr. Jones gets stuck at the office and Mrs. Jones got to take the kids by herself. That's going to be convenient. So we've been doing that for a long time. So,
well, and Dave, most consumers, you know, they don't wake up in the morning and go, oh, I really want to hang out with my realtor today. What they want is a professional. I don't want to hang out with my lawyer. I don't want to hang out with my accountant. I want the accountant to take care of my finances. I want the lawyer to take care of my legal liability. And I want my realtor to help me buy and sell a house. I'm not looking to hang out with a realtor. I'm not looking to have a new friend. And most people like that. Now, if you become a friend of a client, that's fine. I'm not discarding that. That's not what really, you were there. If you're really a professional and you really care about what your profession is, not the soft side, not the BS side. Doesn't mean you don't have emotional empathy. It doesn't mean you don't have a high emotional IQ to help a consumer navigate through the process. But they don't really want to hang out with you anyway. And they have other things to do. And you have other things to do than hanging out with your clients. So do this efficiently. Do it through Zoom. Do it through all new ways of, you know, delivering contracts and closing and virtual closings, and get rid of the notary and get rid of all these inane, stupid things that get in the way of you doing your job as a realtor.
Well, absolutely. Well, we kind of need the governments to accept the online notary, and I know there's issues with that. We had issues with that here in New Jersey, and I don't think it's still being accepted. So when we talk about, you earlier talked about some brick and mortar companies that might go away, right? You've got the huge companies like Relogy, and you've got the ever increasing size of Compass coming in and their business model. Do you see the bigger companies like Relogy or Remax or any of these companies getting smaller and actually at the same time more productive or more efficient? Do you see that happening with Relogy in particular? Because I think they're the biggest.
Yeah, I mean, the sale of cards, and that was pre-coronavirus. They were obviously trying to get lean, and you know, it's really clear why, Dave. I mean, they have this gigantic, gargantuan debt that they've had hanging over that company since, you know, forever. When Apollo brought out Henry Silverman and the company with all that debt, Apollo got out. Woo, they're out of the picture, and Richard Smith had to carry that burden, and now Ryan, and both were good managers for the time. But look at what happened to Relogy. You know, it gave up the opportunity to be the consumer brand for real estate to Zillow because it was on its heels with all that debt. You know, all the cuts Relogy had to go through. They couldn't really innovate. They made one acquisition of Zip Real, but they did, you know, they just laid the groundwork. They laid the groundwork not only for Zillow, but for Compass. Compass came in and with a lot of capital swooped in. It did really, if you look at it, it was the same, you know, the same blue book, the same strategy that Sendit used in 1996. They went in and bought market share, and Compass went in and bought market share. You know, that's what companies an opportunity and bought market share. Zillow bought they bought consumer brand of habit. People may know Century 21, they know Remax, but the brand of habit like a Google or a Facebook in real estate is Zillow. And a brand of habit is a lot more powerful than a brand that you're aware of. Right. And so Relogy's been on its heels. I give credit to Ryan Snyder for digging out of it. But the recent debt, as I understand it, is at a higher rate than he had. But the debt holders of the original debt, you know, is coming due next year. So he had to refinance it at a high rate to pay them off. And now that's still hanging over his head. So that's the big looming question for Realogy. How does it manage that debt and still innovate? But clearly, Dave, that's about being leaner. And, I think it's hardest to pay off debt, but they are also leaner. It's a sprawling network that at one time looked like it could be a powerful flywheel, in many ways was, but the reality is they just can't afford it. Now, the market could save them because their share is so big and they're being forced now. I suspect, if you listen to the earnings call, Dave, every time NRT is the big weight on the back of that company. And because of its, lack of profits that you would expect it to get, and that's mostly due to its cost structure. And what's the central element of that cost structure? Dave, it's what we just talked about. It's the office space, and to warehouse what I call, the strategy is to use a lot of office space to warehouse ad agents. That just seems like a bad business strategy. So I think all these companies will rethink how they do business. Yeah. And I think we're going to see them. But are we going to see roll-ups? Yes. Are we going to see consolidation? Yes. Are we going to see mergers? Yes. Gary Keller at our Connect Now conference, he said, which I was surprised, we think of consolidation. A big broker buys a small broker, two small brokers merge. Occasionally someone comes in like Ed Silverman or Robert Refkin and share instantly. But what Gary implied is that from the tech world, the Zillows and the Open Doors and the OfferPads and the traditional industry, that's where he said would be a marriage. And I just thought it was insightful. And I followed up after. I said, Gary, is he aware of some? He's not going to tell me, but as a journalist. But the point is that is possibly where we could see some marrying going on. And, think of the Redfin, Zillows, OfferPads, Open Doors, not the software vendors, the guys that really in the transaction deeply, and the offices with some of the traditional brokerages. And I think Gary's probably right, and other people are talking about it. What's interesting is the shoe hasn't dropped that we thought it would on M&A and real estate. And I think the reason, Dave, is the market is creating some forgiveness for companies that ordinarily, if real estate had gone the way of retail in the last 3 months, Dave, we would see massive consolidation and bankruptcies. But real estate's market's good, so the commission dollars coming in, and so I that's the real question here.
So what about business models? I mean, you've got the business model of Keller Williams, you've got the business model of EXP, and you've got the business model of Compass. And what I've seen of all three, full disclosure, I am also affiliated with EXP. So, I mean, what I see is I see two differences with Keller Williams and EXP, but I also see Compass coming in. And it seems what they seem to be doing in this market, at least, is buying agents and waiting a couple of years and renegotiating with them. Buying by giving them dollars and cents and everything else. It just doesn't. I don't know if that's a sustainable model, though. It's just. I mean, they're what are they going to do?
Yeah, no, I think you make a good point. I'm not sure I know the answer to that question, but I don't think it's too different when Realogy came in and bought all the brands. They renegotiated all of those franchise brand agreements. Everyone. I mean, as many as they could. They came like, we're going to take advantage of this. We're going to reap more out of this, right? Or wring more out of this. And so it's not unusual to go in and buy share, in this case, in that case, a franchise operation, in this case, broker owner. And what do you do to gobble up shares? You overpay. I would argue that back in the day, Senate probably overpaid for Coldwell Banker. They paid that outfit, family-owned, big family out of San Francisco, I think $800 million. You could arguably say they might have overpaid. The point in that is that that's kind of normal behavior to renegotiate. But looking at all the business models, I love what it's doing at EXP. I think it's been very innovative, timely. I think the jury out on his virtual world. I think it works, but it's still, for me, it's clunky. It's like, I even think 3D is clunky for the consumer. You got to get it together and deliver a better 3D experience. I think the virtual office space, I've had Inman, Slack, Zoom, we don't need to do these things that are more clunky or gimmickry, and I'm not sure gimmickry, but I give him, I love Glenn. He used to come to Connect with a new idea every year. He was a software guy, and I loved his spirit and his attitude, and he finally hit it, and he's got a winner. And every agent that I talk to, they love the company, they love the spirit, they love the culture. They have that same sort of Moj, the Remax had 20 years ago. I think they still have it. Certainly Gary Keller has it. There's a certain affinity to a company that has a community that isn't too corporate. And I think, when you get into the details of agent compensation, I think Gary Keller, you got to participate. If you want to attract, you got to provide participation. I think EXP. I mean, Glenn says I learned so much from Gary Keller. He admits it.
Right.
So those models look good. Again, the market is important here. It's all of them. It gets Compass. It puts wheels on their car, and it does on EXP, and it does in Gary Keller. They all seem to be doing just fine now. I don't know about the talk that KW's market shares eroding. I don't know those details, but people suggest that. And I think we covered them all, did we? Redfin, I think the world of. I think Kelman is a super bright guy,
right?
And I always compared him to tortoise and hare. He's methodically building share. And if you go look at a listing right now in your backyard, Dave, and type it in, and look for houses and wherever you are. And Zillow's obviously number one. Realtor.com is sometimes number two, but consistently around the country, Redfin. About Redfin, unlike Realogy, which gave up the consumer opportunity on the internet, right? Redfin not only has a brokerage operation, it not has technology, but it has what Zillow has, consumer distribution. And Compass has no consumer distribution. Realogy has no consumer distribution. Remax has no consumer distribution. KW has no consumer distribution. EXP has no consumer distribution. Glenn has consumer distribution, and he has a broker model, and he has technology. So that guy just keeps, he is definitely the tortoise, but I think at the end of the race, he could be in the top.
I agree with you. I agree with you there. So anyway, I want to thank you so much for coming in. We've hit our time, but I have one quick question. Two quick questions for you.
I don't want to forget. I need to really sincerely apologize for being late. It's not my habit, and so I really do apologize to your listeners and your viewers, because that's not cool at all, and not Brad Inman style.
Well, I thank you for that. That's very nice of you. Thank you for saying that. So just two quick questions. Number one, is there going to be an Inman Connect conference in person this year, or 21?
I don't know. I do know that we had a fabulous success with our virtual one, and we're doing more, and we're building that. We see it as a different product line, Dave. It's not a physical event. I, more than anybody, want to have them. And this is where externalities, and here's a great example. And I give this to the Inman management team. I don't run Inman, I own it, but I got a great management team. Probably the best digital media people in the world running Inman. And they pivoted in 2 months, and they knew the Inman community wanted to get together, and they knew it wouldn't be perfect. It wouldn't emulate. So we didn't think of it as a physical event. Let's just get the community together. And now let's keep getting the community together. And we created a whole new product line out of it. And that's how people in real estate need to look. When things are changing around you, you need not change your whole business model, but pivot to the opportunity. Look at your core. Our core was the Inman readership. Our core was the Inman community. Our core were the people that not only read us every day, but come to our events and travel all over the country. Just respond to your customer very quickly with value, more value, less. We charge $50 instead of $800. People don't have to fly to get there. And people had a really good experience. For that crowd that loves to network, they stayed up all night and drank together on Zoom, and they connected. People made referrals, got business out of it. Our exhibitors, our sponsors are happy. So what we'll do with our physical events, I don't know, because it's controlled by things that I can't dictate. Right. But we do know that we're going to have virtual events that are going to be huge, and the margins are great as a businessman. The cool thing about digital, Dave, digital is higher margin. And this, like you're doing this, right? You're doing this through Zoom. Your margins are much better than if you have people like me going to studios. Right. And news has always been digital, and that always gave us an advantage. I'm not printing magazines. So it's amazing when you deploy digital, how your margins increase. And it's just common sense.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's a great answer. So just last question is you came on here, what can I do to help you in your business? What can I do personally to help you?
Well, Dave, you have a great reputation. And this is just one example. And I love the fact that you said you had 20 years experience. I have never sold real estate. I have never been a broker. I've never been an agent. I'm a lifelong journalist who got lucky and saw the real estate beat an exciting one. But just keep doing what you're doing. Communication has never been more important. And if it can ever help airlift you to expand your listenership or viewership, we're happy to do. So you're a part of that community. You're a loyal customer, as you said, coming to our events. I'm very grateful. And it's probably more, what can I do for you?
Yeah, it could be. That's right. Well, Brad, thank you so much for coming on. If you stand just for a second as we go off, thank you so much. And everybody, thank you so much for watching the broadcast. And we will see you really soon.